All right, folks. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's noon on a Friday with a big game tonight out at the LA Coliseum with Utah coming to town to take on the USC Trojans. Both teams have already played BYU. The Cougars winning over the Trojans last week in overtime, one of the exciting games of Saturday. And of course, the Utes took care of BYU 30-12 with a big second half in week one. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We bring on Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info each and every Friday to break down the betting odds and look at some of the big games across college football and also give his wild card selection. We are waiting on Steve, so I will certainly talk some college football with you until Steve jumps on the line. And we've got so much content already delivered to you for week 4 and more coming today. Just finished up a record with Greg Peterson on Nebraska's game with Illinois. We're going to talk some Tennessee, Florida this afternoon. On the Tennessee side, we already hit the Florida side with Jackie Franchuli from Rivals earlier in the week, so check out that preview. We have previewed Michigan, Wisconsin from both sides, from the Wolverines take and also from the Badger take. Those videos already posted. We've got a conversation coming later today from both the Georgia side and the Notre Dame side. I've had a few people ask me about Georgia and Notre Dame being the game of the week for the most part, in most people's minds, the game of the week, maybe the college football game of the season in terms of non-conference play, Georgia and Notre Dame in Athens. And yes, we will hit that game from both angles, from the Dogs and from the Irish later today, and get those posted as soon as possible. Again, this is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We'll talk college football today, of course, throughout the day. And Utah and USC, this would seem to be a make or break game for USC in particular. Obviously, both teams need to win the Pac-12 South Division. They seem to be the chief competitors, although Arizona State made a bit of a statement on the road in East Lansing last weekend, winning against Sparty by a late field goal miss by Michigan State. And Matt Coughlin missing that field goal, and Michigan State falls as a 15-point favorite at home against Arizona State. And I believe we've got Steve on the line with us. Steve, how you doing today?
Doing well, Mark. How you doing?
Doing great. Appreciate you jumping on the line. And I want to remind everyone that Steve is at Pro Sports Info, prosportsinfo.com, and he is the expert. So if you want my picks and you just want to throw a couple bucks at me, then you go to the description section below and you grab the link at Voice of College Football Community. But if you really want to win some money and understand this deal, then you lock in with Steve at Pro Sports Info. Steve, there's a couple things that came to mind I just jotted down as I reviewed some of the games from both last week and just overall over the first 3 weeks. If you just look at the top 25 games and maybe a few other games of relevance outside the top 25, the favorites have won the games outright, not necessarily covered, but won the games outright 61-10, 61 out of 71. Seems pretty reasonable. So the underdogs are winning about 13-14% of the time. And we've talked about those games under one score, whether to play the favorite or seriously consider the underdog winning outright. So the favorites are 11-7 in those games at 8 points or less. We had a crazy game last night. That Tulane-Houston game was something else where Houston races out as a road dog 28-7. Tulane comes back. Looks like the game's going into overtime, and then Tulane pulls off two remarkable plays to get a bad beat for a lot of people in that one.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think Tulane is the type of team that was going to be able to come back down 28-7 that easily. Not a great passing offense, obviously, and they were only 7 for 20 throwing the ball, yet the quarterback had 3 touchdowns. So just a weird box score overall, just a weird game. And you have to wonder how that affects Houston going forward. You know, it was strange to see Tulane as a 5-some point road favorite over Houston. Things have obviously changed for those two teams. Tulane is on the rise. Houston has really struggled since Herman went to Texas a couple years ago. And that type of loss, when you're up 28-7, lose a game like that can linger. I've always said letdowns happen more after tough losses than I think emotional wins. A lot of the time, the emotional wins can kind of catapult a team. That momentum keeps going. I'd be very careful with Houston the next couple of weeks until we see them turn things around.
All right, looking at week 3 real quick in review, because I always like to get your take in regards to what happened outside the the norm in regards to what really caught your eye. Obviously, Kansas goes on the road, wins for the first time against a Power 5 in like 11 years. 23-point underdog. They win at BC. Florida had the crazy finish, scoring 19 straight as an 8-point favorite to come back and pull that out and actually, depending on your specific line, cover or push it. Arizona State wins outright as a 15-point dog at Michigan State. Of course, Citadel, 26-point underdog. They win against Georgia Tech. And I saw 3 7-point dogs win outright. Temple over Maryland. Also, Kansas State over Mississippi State. And now I'm not coming up with the other one. It was a 7-point spread somewhere else. But what jumped out at you in regards to an outlier or some kind of trend?
Yeah, I was surprised by the Arizona State game. I know on the show we disagreed last week. I actually went 3-1 on Saturday. My best bets. The one I missed was actually Michigan State. And I know you liked Arizona State in that one, so that was a good call. It'll be interesting to see how the Spartans bounce back this week against, which be a low-scoring game against Northwestern. It's always a red flag for me when I have a team that's in, I think, a good spot technically with the handicapping angles, and then not only did they not cover, but they lose outright as a double-digit favorite. So yeah, Michigan State's a team I'll be keeping a close eye on the next few weeks. Something might not quite be right there. Same thing with Michigan. I've used a lot of big favorites this year. I had 2 of them last week. They both cashed with Notre Dame and Auburn, both laying 5 touchdowns. As I've mentioned on the show here, I've been using a lot of big favorites this year with success. One of the few that did not work for me was, of course, in week 1 with Michigan when they won but didn't cover. And then they struggled against Army the next week. I didn't have anything in that game. But so I'll have a close eye on that, Michigan-Wisconsin game, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But that's what I look for on a weekly basis is really teams that overperform or underperform. Some of those outright underdog winners, maybe they're play on teams. We'll have to see. The one team I'd be careful with this week, by the way, you mentioned Kentucky. I thought that was another one of those games, kind of like Houston last night, where you got to be careful with the team going forward. That loss could linger. Kentucky's a team that really, got on the national map last year as a contender. And to miss out on that game against Florida and now have to go at Mississippi State, I could see them being a little flat this week, the Wildcats.
All right. Speaking of Michigan, let's dive right into our pack. So I usually hit Steve up with the 3 biggest games of the week. Hopefully he agrees with this 3. I think 2 are pretty obvious. One's in Madison, Camp Randall Stadium, huge Big Ten opener with Wisconsin, a 3.5-point favorite based on the line I'm looking at, hosting Michigan. Somebody mentioned it to me this week that Michigan was like a 9.5-point pick in the offseason look at games against Wisconsin. This thing swung 12 or 13 points because Michigan's poor play and Wisconsin's dominance thus far.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, it was a real red flag for me when Michigan, not only did they only win by 19 as a 4-touchdown favorite, but they didn't really look great doing it against Middle Tennessee. And that was a spot I thought they would really come out and romp them. So it's always a huge red flag for me when a team underperforms like that. And looking, back in the summer, this line definitely was going to be the other way around. So this is a favorite reversal, as I like to call it. And it's because Michigan has struggled a bit, but also because Wisconsin has looked really good. They've won their first 2 games by a combined score of 110-0. Now, the good news for Michigan after those lackluster performances against Middle Tennessee and Army, in which they went 2-0 straight up 0-2 against the spread, is they did get the bye week. It came at a really good time for them in week 3. Problem is, Wisconsin also had the bye coming into this game, and they have home field advantage. Harbaugh 0-5 straight up on the road now at Michigan against top 15 opponents. So he has not done well in these type of games. Michigan has underperformed for the most part. The key, though, for me is where this line settles. As you mentioned, Mark, it's mostly 3.5 now. It was 3 earlier in the week. 3 is the most critical number in all of football. College favorites alone are going to win about 8 or 9% of the time by exactly 3 points. So this line going from 3 to 3.5 lowers your chances of winning by nearly 8 to 9%. With that said, though, I still lean Michigan in this game, especially if you can still find -3 or less. I just think they've been the safer, more consistent team so far this season.
Got Steve Merrill on the line from ProSportsInfo.com. Please join him right there. The products, the services, not just with college football, the NFL, Major League Baseball with the playoffs upcoming. And before you know it, the NBA will be on the court as well. We hit Steve each and every Friday is our designated time at noon Eastern time. So join us right here every week. It's one of the fun segments we do. I gain a whole lot from it. We've hit you with Michigan, Wisconsin. Hey, if I can only watch one game, I'm actually watching that game even above the last 2, which are pretty stellar. I selected Auburn at Texas A&M. The Aggies are a 3.5-point favorite at home, which kind of tells us that Vegas looks at these teams as being equals. Your thoughts about that one?
Well, I think the big question mark here is obviously how the young quarterback for Auburn plays on the road. I think from what we've seen so far, there's a lot of talent there. They've performed well at home. As I mentioned last week, I did have Auburn as a best bet for my clients. They laid the 35.5. They won by 38. This is a team that looks pretty good this year, but this is a huge road test. And right now it's sitting around 3.5 or so, which is a very key number, as I just mentioned in that Wisconsin game. The line gets down to 3 or less. I think maybe you start taking a look at A&M in this one just based on value at 3.5 or more. If you like Auburn, I'd play it now because it's such a critical number. I think when the season's over, Auburn's probably the better team, but it's really tough to play a true freshman here on the road in such a hostile environment, and that would be the big concern in this one.
Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info, joining us on a regular basis each and every Friday, noon Eastern time. So lock it in and make sure you're right here. Love this segment with Steve each and every week as he provides his insight, and join him over on prosportsinfo.com. All right. It's a huge spread, but it's also a huge game. So there's a little dichotomy there, a little bit of a paradox with Notre Dame going to Georgia. The Irish have been awful historically, recent history, of course, against top 5, top 10 teams. Georgia's a 14 to 14.5-point favorite. Again, one of your plays right there in regards to, wow, what can you catch there? I saw 14.5 and grabbed it, but to let the cat out of the bag in regards to what I'm thinking. But yeah, 14.5 with Georgia at home against Notre Dame.
Yeah, another critical number. I mean, all 3 games we're talking about here on some of the most key numbers in football. Obviously, those first 2, 3, 3.5 is the key number. 7 would be next, but when you're looking in college football, 14 is right up there as well. I mean, the difference between 7 and 14, 1 or 2 touchdowns, pretty much the same. A lot of games are going to land on exactly a 14-point margin, and this line has crossed over that key number. Earlier in the week, Georgia was minus 13.5. Now they're minus 14.5. So if you like Georgia, you've probably missed out on the value. At this point, I think you could start getting some value with Notre Dame at 14.5 or more. I did have a best bet on them last week for my clients. Laid the 35. They won by 52 against New Mexico. They played Louisville the week before that. Or actually 2 weeks before that. And it's a weird scheduling situation I wanted to bring up because they did have the bye in week 2 in between those games. You got to figure they were probably starting to prep for Georgia. And even though they won easily by 52 last week, I would think the last 2 weeks have been preparing for this Georgia attack. So I do think there's a little bit of a scheduling edge for that reason, even though it's a road game here for Notre Dame. You know, going back last year on the 14 playoff, I said Notre Dame was the team that didn't deserve to be there. I had them only 7th or 8th in my power rankings. They were exposed. And other than Clemson and Alabama, Georgia's been the 3rd best team in the country now for several years. This is a statement game for them. Just not sure how much line value is left now. Once it's crossed that key number of 14, it's up to 14.5.
Yeah, and you always get concerned with maybe Georgia does prove to be the dominant team. Maybe they're 20 points better in the 4th quarter, but then they give up a touchdown, and there you go with a backdoor cover when they don't really care that Notre Dame scored to make it, 30 to 17. All right, Steve Merrill on the line, and this is always intriguing to get your take on. Could be a big matchup, could be delved into the Sun Belt or wherever in regards to where you possibly see some value or just an interesting line that hits you this week.
Yeah, this is a team I haven't used yet this year, but I have been using, as I mentioned, a lot of big favorites, 4 or 5 touchdown favorites, and for the most part, hit about 75% of those. Been doing very well. College football, 10-5. NFL college combined, now 25-9 on the season. And one of the reasons college and NFL are off to good starts is I've been looking for blowout games, and I think I've spotted one this week. We're going to go with Miami of Florida, currently minus 29.5 against Central Michigan. It's a big number. And as we've talked about, handicapping these games when you have the big numbers is all about motivation. And I think Miami will have plenty of it. We saw it last week after a 0-2 start. They had plenty of motivation against Bethune-Cookman, beat them 63-0. Now, you could make the argument, well, maybe that was their blowout game. But look at the schedule here. They have a bye on deck next week, so they have no look ahead here. I see no reason why they don't smoke another team here, which is they're capable of smoking. Central Michigan's won their 2 home games this year. They've played 1 road game that was at Wisconsin 2 weeks ago. They lost 61-0 as a 35-point dog. So this is the only way you could play this game is Miami of Florida, and I think the line is actually reasonable at 29.5.
Yeah, and when a team loses and they don't score, man, I really got to question how bad their offense is because it's right there in the fourth quarter most of the time for a team to tack on a touchdown or get 10 points or something, and we see it all the time. But to get shut out start to finish when it's not a close game, and just a complete annihilation by Wisconsin in that one. Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info, breaking it down for us. I hit all the big games, including his prediction of the week. But you got to get the full throttle look at college football, the NFL, and whatever else you're into, Major League Baseball, right at prosportsinfo.com. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, Mark.
See you next week.
Sounds good.
All right. Yes, that was Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. I will stay on the line for a couple more minutes and look over the live chat, see what you guys have for me. And I've got a ton to do right after I get off here. Tennessee, Florida preview, 2 separate Georgia-Notre Dame previews, one from the Irish side, one from the dog side. We've got a ton of previews out there. Hopefully you're scarfing those down. We've got Nebraska coming your way very soon as they open up the Big Ten play against Illinois. And I know that I started conference rankings. I apologize that I stalled after I did the first 2. I will finish those out because I've got all the information in front of me, and I've gathered up my thoughts and my statistics on conference play and looking at the various conferences and how well they've played to date. But again, I've only produced the first 2 videos on the Pac-12 and the ACC and my thoughts on how well they've performed and what they've got in front of them in terms of conference rankings and a power index there. And let's see what you guys have for me. A power index there. All right. Jay Jobs, the voice of college football. Thank you so much, Jay Jobs. You're right there for me. I appreciate it, man. NCIS fanatic in the house. Matt Griffith, Buckeyes fan. 863 Kane, good to see you. Looking at Michigan Northwestern, Michigan State Northwestern, I certainly have some specific thoughts on that one as well. Again, you can get my predictions at the Voice of College Football Community. It's down in the description link below. You're not going to see it right now, unfortunately, with the live stream, but I'll get it posted very soon. It's on any of the videos. So if you go to any of the videos, you go to the description section, you see Voice of College Football Community and see the link right there. You get my predictions right there. I appreciate a number of people signing up here just in the last couple of days. That's another thing I need to do, a little shout out video for many of you who contribute in so many ways. If it's just new subscribers, or maybe I do an old timer show and I get NCIS Fanatic 21 and Navy Thomas and those guys, George, and I do it up big and thank them. But recent subscribers, people that have donated on the super chat, people that are subscribing now to the Voice of College Football Community, I appreciate it. And I hope and I believe that many of you know what the vision is here and what I need to do to accomplish that vision. So it's not, unfortunately, it just involved analyzing college football and talking college football and having fun talking college football with you guys and talking about the games, and there was no marketing or sales process to it, then that would be fun if the money just fell out of the air and we could just talk college football. But of course, I've got to give it that sales and marketing slice and really dig in there to make this work and make it happen and make it sustainable. And I think you guys enjoy that and understand that, I should say. But again, a lot of thoughts here on Michigan State and Northwestern, with Sparty having trouble scoring more than 7 points, period, against anybody. This is going back to last season. We saw it against Tulsa. They only scored 28, and that was the defense basically setting up the offense. They had the one breakout against Western Michigan, Central Michigan. I get them confused. It was one of those two. It wasn't Eastern. I think it was Central Michigan with 51 points, and then back to it. 7 points against what is not going to be a dominant Arizona State defense. Only 7 points for Sparty last week. So there are serious issues with Michigan State and their coaching of offensive football. I think it goes beyond the players they've recruited, because these players, most of them were around 2 years ago, and certainly the quarterback, Brian Lewerke. They have had issues finding a running back, although they think this Eli Collins is a good player. And Brian Lewerke had a tremendous sophomore season 2 years ago for a Michigan State quarterback. And then he was banged up and really played awful last year. And Rocky Lombardi did worse, coming in at 44%. Michigan State, wow, look at their games down the stretch last season. They scored less than double digits almost every game. They only scored 14 points against Rutgers. And this is carried on now. This is the first quality team they've played, and they couldn't even play good offensive football and produce against Tulsa. And then Arizona State comes in and holds them to 7. I know they missed 3 field goals, but still, wow. So, yeah. All right. Emotional win over Penn State in 2017 didn't catapult us at all. Talking, I think that was the week before 2017. That was the 39-38 game for the Buckeyes. Don't know what NCIS Fanatic 21 is alluding to specifically there. A lot of talk about Michigan State. A lot of talk about Wisconsin online. We got Just Be Free. Wisconsin hasn't given up a point. How in the hell is Michigan more consistent? NCIS Fanatic 21 likes Wisconsin 31-21. You got Matt Griffith on the line. Good to see you. Wisconsin wins for sure. Just Be Free. Sparty can get high quality offensive linemen or defensive linemen, offensive linemen. And they were beat up last year and now again. Plus, Lewerke is very mediocre. Yes, he is. McD Sports 4, take Northwestern. Plus 9.5. It's free money. Wonder what I have to say about that. NCIS Fanatic going with Georgia 38-13 over the Irish. Just Be Free. USC by 3. Washington by 10. Wisconsin by 3. A&M by 7. Ohio State by 5-6. No, that would be 5.6 times 10.4. Just Be Free. I want Notre Dame to win because Georgia fans are already being annoying and they haven't won anything yet. But Notre Dame has just been overrated for 30 years. 30 years. 30 years. Clemson alum jumps in. Will you analyze the playoff committee top 5 each week once they start? Clemson alum 98. Let me mark that down to make sure we get to that. That was something I think I did the last couple of years. I post so many videos, I can't remember. Yeah, so about the second to third week of October, they will release their first college football playoff top 25. Yes. That needs to be analyzed. That is crucial. That is the top 25 that matters. For as much as my top 25 makes sense, and there's all sorts of other top 25s, coaches poll, AP poll, they instantly don't matter. As of 2014, they don't matter, except in people's minds. But who knows? Maybe they sway the college football playoff selection committee. It's not supposed to happen, but maybe they do. Maybe they look at the AP poll. I'm guessing that most of those people look at the other polls, and that plants something in their minds. So maybe there's some impact there from the coaches poll and the AP poll. But yes, Clemson alum 98. I don't know where I put that reminder. I'll put it somewhere, but that should click once the committee has something to say on that Sunday night, that I will roll out my video to tear them to shred. No, to analyze their fine selections. And they've got it. I've said it many times. For as many times as I've had some criticism of their selections, it's been more about their approach being inconsistent, but they have an impossible job. At the end, they have an impossible job. And they also have an impossible job, not just selecting 4 when there's 5 conferences, and there being inequity in the conferences, of course, but also having to set themselves up and play that game and look 2 and 3 weeks in advance to the final gun to say, let's not put ourselves in a corner like we may have the final week of the 2014 season when we had Ohio State back at 6 and they had to leapfrog a TCU and a Baylor. And their justification was exactly justified when the Buckeyes went out and hammered Wisconsin 59-0, and the other two didn't play a game. And they also have been consistent in this one matter, in this one aspect since day one. And it's that, and they take a very similar approach to what I take in building my top 25 every week. I don't say, Florida was number 7 last week. They beat Kentucky, who's pretty good, but man, they looked bad. I'm going to drop them to 10. They don't do that. I think that's a stupid way because you're isolating each and every team. You strip away everything. Say, I don't care what I ranked whomever last week, and you start over. And last week you had 2 games to work with. Now this week I had 3 games to work with. And I said, okay, who beat whom? Who beat whom? And how impressive were the performances? So when Ohio State goes out and beats Indiana 51-10, that weighs different in my mind than Ohio State going out and beating Indiana 23-20. More so with the really good big matchups. When Auburn barely beats Oregon, sure, I credit them with the win. They're ranked very high in my rankings. But had they gone out against Oregon and beaten them 42-10, that would have weighed more heavily. And that's one of the reasons why Alabama gets a bit of a pass with me. And it's not a pass. I'm rating their dominance. I'm ranking their dominance. They haven't played anybody except Duke and South Carolina, who are going to be top 50-ish teams, 40 to 50, something in that range. So they've beaten 2 okay teams, but they've hammered them. Pigsky and Pete on the line. Florida hasn't looked good after 3 games. They are massively overrated. Again, Pixie and Pete, it depends on how you're rating and ranking. I've got them ranked number 5, and I've got them ranked number 17. How does that make sense? Well, this is how it makes sense. I've got one poll, which is a one-person poll, me, the voice of college football, that says, okay, I'm just looking at results on the field. And in that vein, Florida, has the 2 most impressive wins for one team in the country. They beat a good Miami team. I know they're 1-2. They'll be fine. They'll be 8-4. When I say good, I don't mean great. I don't mean they're going to contend for the ACC. I mean they're a top 35 to 40 team. And Florida also beat a Kentucky team that's probably better than Miami, and they beat them on the road. They beat them without their quarterback. They beat Kentucky. Of course, the counter argument can always be, well, Kentucky's no good and Miami's no good. Well, we'll see. We can only go off what we currently see in front of us. And I would be pretty safe in saying that between Kentucky and Miami, they are top 30 to 40 teams in the country, and Florida has beaten both of them. That's the result. Regardless of how they looked, that is the result. And then in their other game, they completely wiped out in FCS. So Florida has the 2 best wins by one team in the country. Can't think of another team right now that has 2 better wins. Not saying that they're the most impressive, but they're the best wins. Therefore, they rank number 5 in the top 25. That actually makes sense. Now, I countered that with a ranking of my top 25, and I extended to 27 because I feel like people just want me to tell you who the best teams are in the country. And when that was the question of my rankings, just boom, my head, my gut feeling on these teams and how good they are, like Oklahoma's done nothing. So in my top 25, that actually makes sense based on the results on the field against nobody any good. Houston lost to Tulane last night. So who is Oklahoma beaten? Nobody. Horrible teams. UCLA, South Dakota, and Houston. I've got Oklahoma at 18. So people I think that they're the 18th best team in the country. No. So I followed that up with okay, this is Mark Rogers and how I believe, as the voice of college football, good these teams are. And I had Oklahoma at 6. I believe they're the 6th best team in the country. I believe there are 5 teams that are better than everyone else, and maybe still 2 better than everyone else. But I certainly believe that there are 5 better than everyone else. If you want to know who those 5 are, I'm sure you could guess, but it's in my rankings that were my top 27 rankings. My from the gut from the brain, here are the best teams in the country. So, yeah, Florida plummeted because I don't think they're that good. They're 17 good. Number 17 is where I've got them. But number 5 in the rankings that should matter based on the results on the field. Pigskin gets my philosophy. I'm just saying after watching them, they are maybe 17 to 20. Me too, 17 to 20 in my mind. I got them at 17. Got them at 17. Let's answer a few questions and get some comments posted, and then we'll get back to work. I got Tennessee, Florida. I got to work on. Nebraska and their game against Illinois, and I got another preview with both sides, Georgia, Notre Dame coming up. So I'm pushed up against 1 o'clock, but let's see what you guys have here. All right. Ohio State, people flipped out because I had them after 2 weeks at like number 16. They played FAU and Cincinnati. I clearly stated I do not believe that this is the 16th best team in the country. Then I rank them number 4 in my other ranking. There it is. Clemson alum 98 reminding me. Thanks for the reminder. We'll get on that in a few weeks. Happy Friday to Pigskin. If I miss your comment, it's because I can't see him too well. 4 losses this year from Michigan. I can see it. McD says Michigan's going to lose to Maryland. Of course, he picks the Terps to beat everyone. Maryland has a better win than Ohio State and Michigan. Okay. Maryland also has a worse loss than Ohio State and Michigan. Don't lose games. That's part of the equation. We just don't rank the wins. We rank the losses too, McD. So understand that. I didn't rank Maryland's 5 wins last year. I actually took into consideration, they lost 7 games too. Not just, they played 5 games. They beat Texas and they won 5 games. Let's rank them. Bondo, what's up, Mark? Thank you for making the something of my work week a little better. We do what we can, Bondo. Appreciate it. Lamar, sneaky with the live stream. So every Friday at noon, Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info to talk betting lines. Every Friday at noon. I think we've hit this 3 consecutive weeks, but as soon as I say that, the voice of college football has a little trip planned at next weekend. So the content delivery might be a little sporadic. Have a little vacation, a little pleasure next weekend, little personal time. So we'll see how that works out. I will catch as much college football as I can, and I will be around. But it might be a little sporadic, not hanging out all Saturday afternoon necessarily. If you see me, you'll see me on location next weekend. All right. Anybody with anything to say? Matt, Texas A&M will be much better than their record. Yep. Tough schedule. Brutal schedule. Rutgers is bad. Yep. I'd have Ohio State as number 2 or 3 right now. They look legit so far. Yep. I can see that. Have not played the kind of game that LSU had to face against Texas, of course, or Clemson against Texas A&M, of course. But it's coming. It's coming. The Buckeyes have about 5 consecutive rough games coming up in the Big Ten. Not teams that are daunting, but good teams. Michigan State, Northwestern, Michigan, or not Michigan. Again, the sleep schedule is getting to me, I think. All right, who else is on the chat here? The only thing giving me pause with Ohio State is the young quarterback. One of the big reasons why I picked the Buckeyes to lose 2 games, but to be red hot at the finish. But he's come out pretty well. He misses some throws. Every quarterback does. He's gained some criticism for missing throws. Joel Klatt of Fox was breaking down his mechanics last weekend. And yeah, there are some flaws in the mechanics. There are flaws with almost every quarterback outside of Drew Brees and Tom Brady. Jeff Goldblum. I don't know that I like that. Yeah, Felipe Franks unfortunately hurt. Don't like to see guys get hurt. Just be free. I would recommend when you do your rankings to just put them how you think they're going to play out by the end of the year. It's a lot easier to explain than why you have Oklahoma 18th. We don't do it easy. Just be free. We don't go the easy route, the path of least resistance. Because why watch my top 25 poll when it really comes down to it? If my rankings look just like the AP rankings that look just like this guy's rankings and that guy's rankings and this woman's then we're arguing over, is Michigan 8th or are they 7th? Is Clemson 1 or is Bama 1 and Clemson 2? The reason I release a top 25, if my top 25 was going to look like everybody else's top 25, then I would say, well, unless I just want a couple thousand views because people watch top 25 videos, then I'll throw out my top 25 just like everybody else does. But I actually trying to provide a different perspective, a different value. And actually, I do believe that's the way teams should be ranked. Is based on what they've done on the field, not our speculation about what they're going to do a month from now. Because I get that comment all over the place when I release my rankings. Well, there's no way Auburn's going to go through this schedule and stay number 3. Okay, we'll see it play out. But right now, they're number 3. I've got them number 3 right now. And then what's funny is then when Auburn loses, which they almost assuredly will at some point, then people are going to be like, see, I told you they weren't number 3. Yeah. I'm ranking the teams based on what they've done thus far. Also, that doesn't seem to be a criticism of the AP poll or the coaches poll or anybody else's poll that look all like each other, almost identical to each other. When a team loses, they drop, unless it's some very impressive loss and they're number 20 and they lose to number 1 by a field goal. But generally, when teams lose, they drop. So we're not critical of the AP poll when, oh, well, they thought Washington was number 5. Well, they lost to Cal and they dropped to 15. They're stupid. No, they just dropped them from 5 to 15 after they lost a game that they shouldn't lose. Nebraska, Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Maryland. Yes, that is the run for the Buckeyes. David, Mark, who were the 2 losses for the Buckeyes or the 2 loses for the Buckeyes? I don't know. I know it's not to Michigan because I broke the tie. I had Michigan 10-2, 7-2 in the Big Ten, Ohio State 10-2, 7-2. I did not do what a lot of people do and post a big board. And I did this like 2 years ago. What I found funny that particular season was the one game where I predicted Pitt was going to beat Miami, even though I said that Miami's a better team. The better team doesn't always win the game. And I gave Pitt like a 35 or 40% chance of winning. So not only did I go through every team in the nation, maybe I should do this next offseason because people like this, went through every team and I predicted their wins and losses for every game. But I also included another factor in it. So I clearly stated, here's the classic example. Clemson, Pitt, 2016. Who was the better team? Clemson. They won the national championship. Pitt finished 8-5. What would be the odds of Clemson losing to Pitt? 10%, 15%? Well, they did. On that particular Saturday, they lost to Pitt, 43-42. So what I did, people, again, did not understand that I was stating Clemson has a 90% chance of winning this game, but I believe that they're going to lose. And they would win this game 90% of the time, but they're going to lose. That happened with the Pitt-Miami game, the one where Miami was 10-0. Before the season even started, I said Miami's got a 60% chance of winning this game. 60-65. Pitt's got a 35 to 40% chance, but Pitt is going to win the game. People went crazy, went nuts on me. And I pointed out to them the team that has the higher percentage power factor, whatever the term is, the predictor index is in their favor. Well, they don't win all the games. It's called an upset. Michigan covering 3 is the best bet. Maybe. Could be. Anthony, would you Buckeye fans want Michigan to win at least one time sometime soon to kind of bring back the rivalry? I believe, Anthony, that would be a moronic thing for any Ohio State fan to wish for a number of reasons. The only conceivable, and it's not even still conceivable, but the situation in which the scenario in which I would somewhat understand your point is if Ohio State is 5-6. Well, let's not make it 5-6 because then they wouldn't make postseason play. They're 3-8 going into that game, and Michigan is 8-3 and really can't go anywhere. It's not going to help them. They're not going to go to the Big Ten championship. Penn State's going to the Big Ten championship game anyway, so it's not going to help Michigan. It's not going to hurt Ohio State. It's a lost season. Otherwise, not in the, if you really understand the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry and any rivalry, it doesn't matter what the scenario is. It doesn't matter how many years in a row you've beaten that team. You don't want to lose a game in the rivalry. Some of the worst defeats of my life as a fan came in games that to everyone else were meaningless, but they just emotionally hit home. They meant something to me. My team was 4-6. They lost a huge game that meant something to me. People would say it was inconsequential. When Ohio State under Jim Tressel in 2001, as a team that would eventually finish 7-5, didn't matter, played Michigan. And a lot of Ohio State fans that were sick of losing to Michigan after Ohio State beat Michigan in Jim Tressel's first Michigan game were like, well, it really didn't matter. Of course, they win this year. It doesn't matter. They're 7-5. To me, that was the world. That was enormous. Just be free. But I follow Ohio State very closely with recruiting and player development, and we have never, ever had this much NFL-capable talent on the roster at one time before. That's a huge statement for a program that produces as much, if not more, NFL talent and quality NFL talent than anyone. There you go, Pigskin Pete. Justin Fields, number one ND fan, very easily could win and has stopped the run very well. Talking about Michigan and Wisconsin. Got 2 videos out on that matchup. I got about 40 minutes delivered from both sides. So dig in. Just be free. We are going to know a lot more about Ohio State after Nebraska. And yes, a limpy Sparty. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. But this Ohio State team or the 2018 version struggled in these kind of games at times, or didn't necessarily struggle on the scoreboard because they scored so many points, but their defense shot down. Yeah, Michigan State on offense. It's a horrible, horrible situation. Michigan State had a top 5 head coach. I don't know that I could rank him that high, Matt, based on what's gone on since 2016. He needs to adapt. And I have been a staunch supporter of Mark D'Antonio and talked about how great he is because what he did from 2007 when he took over the program through 2015 was remarkable. Remarkable. Top 5 finishes at Michigan State. And people now think of Michigan State as a power. If you track Michigan State football from the mid-70s, even before that, the mid-70s that I can speak to, up until 2007, aside from a Rose Bowl run in 1987 and a really good team in 99 with Plaxico Burress that went 10-2, finished in the top 10. 6-5, 7-4, 5-6, 5-6, 5-6, 6-5. Michigan State, I guarantee they didn't finish more than 10 games over 500 for that span of time. 5 and 6 win Michigan State teams over and over and over and over in the 80s and 90s into the 2000s. We got Gary Wyatt. Mark, is there a college pick you like Saturday? So here's the deal, Gary, is I predict all the top 25 games plus some other games that are relevant. You can grab those picks. I've got a link in the description section below next to Voice of College Football Community. Maybe going forward, I'll give you a pick a week. Maybe I should do something like that, which reminds me the whole deal with Bet Now. Go to betnow.eu. It's in the description section below. And again, because we're in a live stream, it's not there right this second, but it will be. And it's in all the videos. Betnow.eu. You get 100% added to your account. Just use that link and the promo code MRTVCFB. MRTVCFB. Two Big Ten teams into the playoff. Lamar, I hear you, but the Big Ten hasn't even gotten one in since 2016. I think we're speaking of John Cooper here, not Copper. Only win 2 games against Wolverines. Right, yes, he won twice. Lost 10, tied 1. Yeah, he won in 1994, 1998. Good question by number 1 ND fan. More impressive for Les Miles. Make the Natty the 1 year and won it 2007. Went back to it in 11. Or take Kansas bowling this year. Yes, NCIS fanatic, 2001, Michigan, Ohio State at the Big House, Buckeyes 23-20, first win at the Big House since 87. Epic. I could definitely see 3 SEC teams before 2 Big Ten. If there are 3 SEC teams in the playoff any given year, or 3 teams from any conference, but it would be from that conference, I will not shut up. I will be on here ranting and raving and screaming for a week nonstop. Nonstop, because that would be a complete farce. It's been a farce to a certain extent already, but that would be a farce. And people start throwing out scenarios. You can throw out all the scenarios, and people too many times don't close out the scenario and really I've got all sorts of questions, because when you throw out scenarios, there's a whole lot of context that has to play into what would happen under a certain scenario. And you're also asking me or somebody else to make a prediction or a speculation on what somebody else is going to choose. You know, it's one thing to say who's going to win this game. It's another thing to say who's going to win the Heisman Trophy. Well, I don't know who they're going to vote for. Or who's going to make the college football playoff. Well, I took my shot at it, and I was really close last year, and I hit all 4 in 2016. Your thoughts on West Virginia -4 at Kansas? I know this game isn't on your predictions. So West Virginia. So they surprised me and a lot of people last week, winning against NC State by 17 after playing so poorly against Mizzou and James Madison. So what does this tell us? Well, this tells us that there are teams that we would rank between about 45 and 75 in the country, and that includes West Virginia. That includes Kansas, something in that range. If Kansas played Boston College again, if they just turned around and played the next week, played this Saturday again, who knows what would happen in that game? I am certainly not convinced that Kansas is 24 points better than Boston College or better than Boston College at all. That's not a good sign or indicator for BC. But these teams between 40 and 70 toss it up. I don't know. I think West Virginia gained a lot of mojo last week in beating NC State as badly as they did, but that was at home. Kansas is going to be fired up and may have a little life in the stadium for the first time in forever. 2007, 2008, when they were good. So I don't have a whole lot of thoughts in regards to nuts and bolts football. Kansas did things last week against BC that they haven't done in years. I'm talking about not just the score, winning a Power 5 game on the road for the first time in 11 years, but in terms of, I didn't watch the game. I was watching the other games. But in terms of what they were able to do offensively against what we thought was going to be a top 40 defense, it's crazy. So, yeah, it's a guessing game. In that situation, I just blindly would take the points. They're at home. They got 4 points. Take them. I'm not telling you to take them, but if somebody held a gun to my head and I would have to pull the trigger, or I wouldn't want to pull the trigger in that case, but I pull the trigger on the pick, take the 4 with the home team. Talking about the playoff, I have certainly hit on the playoff many times, and people know my playoff system, and I will unveil that again. And for the people that are new to the channel, which fortunately for me and fortunately for you who love college football and love what we do here, grows by the day. So thank you so much. I mentioned when we hit 10,000 subscribers back in May that it took us 6 years to hit 5,000. And it took us 8 months to hit the next 5,000. Now we're going to hit the next 5,000 more in like 4, 5, 6 months. We should get to 15,000 by next month. All right, everyone. I've got some Tennessee talk coming up here at 1 o'clock. I'm going to record that. That's not going to be live. I appreciate everybody who joined us. If you had any kind of comment or question that you definitely want to get to me, take it from the live chat, copy and paste it, go to any of the videos and copy and paste it as a comment to one of the videos. Like Seth Meehan, thoughts on Willie Taggart, and then it just scrolled by me. So whatever it was there, please send me that comment and I will answer it. 904 Hurricane, appreciate the comment, the support, all that you do in helping us build the channel, because everybody's got a little part in this. A little part that's actually substantial, because without you, this doesn't exist. I was talking to nobody for a few months, if not a few years, depending on your perspective on who nobody is. 37 views on that video, 12 views on that video, 82 views on that video for a long time, and I stayed with it. So you guys make this happen. People have spoke to my perseverance, and yes, I have a lot of that, but it's inspired by you. So we will talk Tennessee, Florida. That's going to be posted a little bit later. Notre Dame, Georgia from both sides. Wisconsin, Michigan is posted from both sides, both perspectives, and a whole lot more here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And again, if you've got a comment or a question that you want me to respond to, please just grab it, copy it, paste it into the comment section of any of the videos. And of course, join me at the Voice of College Football community for my weekly predictions, plus more content right there. See you guys very soon. We will be back at some point tonight. Utah, USC. I'll get the notification out there. And then, of course, all throughout the day on Saturday, covering the big games and all the games of college football, especially in the Power 5. See you guys very soon. You guys are the best. You guys make it all happen. You push me. You make it all work. And you encourage me. And without you, we don't do this. So we'll see you next time.